from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Hot water and fish farming.
A catfish needs water between 80 and 85 degrees. Tilapia the same way.
How this Idaho farmer found his niche. Machinery Pete has sticker shock.
But honestly, I'm seeing this level of pricing all across the farm equipment space.
The eye-popping prices of used trucks. What a recession means for agriculture.
Maybe a little bit of a drag in the livestock sector, a little bit of a drag in alternative proteins, and a little bit of a drag in some of the fruits, nuts, and higher order goods.
Michelle Rook reports, as the world watches to see Ukrainian grain return to the export market, while farmers gather in the harvest, right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. How much and how fast can Ukrainians ship their grain to the world market? That's the question the world is asking as officials from Ukraine, Turkey, the UN, and several G7 ambassadors gather at the port of Odessa Friday. Ukraine's president leading a tour at the port as a cargo ship sits loaded and ready to go. Nearby, grain silos full and ready to load out the next vessel once the bay is free. All that is left is Russia to approve the route through the Black Sea.
We believe that everyone will keep their commitments and guarantees, so the ships and the personnel who risk their lives can be safe. We don't know how the process is going to go because we know who we are dealing with.
The route is important because it needs to be free of sea mines for the safety of the ship and the sailors. Inland, farmers are working to bring in an uncertain harvest. Nick Robertson reports.
Grain, fresh from harvest, floods into the farm's storage. What happens to it next? The question on everyone's minds. 250 people work here. Their jobs depend on the success of the new UN-brokered grain deal. We have a lot of grain here. We want to ship everything quickly, this grain trucker tells me, but we are stuck because the ports are closed. It's bad.
Wheat store number 5.
Farmer Boris Yureskel owns the farm, shows me his rapidly filling grain stores. He tells me until empty ships arrive, grain prices will stay low. He'll be forced to cut staff and grain production for next year.
And this is the problem for the farmer. The silo here, it's dark, but it's absolutely full. And he still doesn't have a buyer for all this grain.
Shota Kajishvili usually buys grain from Boris.
So far, we don't see any ships coming our way to replace those expecting to leave, because our partners cannot find ships that want to come to Odessa.
If the grain deal doesn't hold, this truck driver tells me he doesn't know what he'll do. He hopes there'll be work. Boris worries if he plants less crops next year, that will be less food for Africans and all the others whom he says he wants to help. At this farm and far beyond, so much rides on getting this year's harvest to the world.
Nick Robertson reporting from Ukraine. Here at home, inflation, the economy, and a debate over recession. Michelle Rook takes a closer look at the impact on agriculture. Michelle?
Clinton, the Fed's action to raise interest rates and a negative second quarter GDP number have many experts saying the U.S. is in a recession, while others argue it's not because of factors like the low unemployment rate. So we looked into some of the trends and what it means for farmers and consumers. The U.S. has had 2 negative quarters of GDP, so that meets the textbook definition of recession, right? Actually, the National Bureau of Economic Research makes the call.
They're really looking for more signs of economic pain than what we're seeing to make that call.
And with low unemployment, he says that may be an offset. Despite that, consumer spending is slowing and shifting, even for food. And historically, consumers also trade down at the grocery store, especially from high cuts of meat to lower alternatives like ground beef.
So I expect to see some maybe a little bit of a drag in the livestock sector, a little bit of a drag in alternative proteins, and a little bit of a drag in some of the fruits, nuts, and higher order goods.
Restaurant sales are already down 10%, which Bailey says is hitting the dairy sector with cheese sales trailing down.
And we've seen our class 3 milk prices, which is the price used to make cheese, is down about 10% since June.
Economists are also keeping an eye on possible global recession, as it can slow demand, especially if the U.S. dollar becomes a safe haven for investors.
As the dollar strengthens, commodity prices tend to fall.
At the same time, both experts see energy prices continuing strong and higher input prices, but say tight global supplies for especially grains should keep commodity prices intact. The good news is agriculture is generally more buffered from recession, and so far, even given the current CPI and GDP data, experts aren't suggesting a deep or sustained economic downturn.
All right, thanks, Michelle. The Association of Equipment Manufacturers is applauding the passage of the CHIPS Act. The bill, now headed for the president's desk, it's meant to boost U.S. semiconductor production by setting up incentives for U.S. companies to increase manufacturing here at home. It also funds research and development to the tune of $52 billion. Semiconductors go into everything from trucks to tractors and computers. Ag companies have reported serious shortages since supply chain problems began during the pandemic. Eastern Kentucky continues to deal with devastating floodwaters following massive rains last week. Rescuers, including the National Guard, have been working around the clock to get folks to safety. Now, the water knocked out bridges, power, even swept homes away. The governor calls it devastating and catastrophic. The region has been declared a federal emergency disaster. A lot of rain fell through the middle of the country last week, but this week warm weather is going to make it steamy. Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik joins us with more. Matt.
Yeah, Clinton, we've got more heat and humidity on the way across the country. The jet stream is going to continue to dig farther to the north, and we're going to be looking at highs about 10 to 15 degrees above average. It starts early in the week, and then that ridge continues to drive to the north into southern parts of Canada as we head into the second half of the week, and that heat moves farther to the north, where we could be looking at parts of the upper Midwest much above average. And you can see that right here on our temperature trend this week, showing the entire center of the country, parts of the Corn Belt and the upper Midwest in that much above normal category. That would be about 10 to 15 degrees above normal. Meanwhile, most of the lower 48 in the orange category, only the Southwest dealing with below average temperatures, and they're going to be dealing with still more of those afternoon showers and some heavy downpours. Looking at that all week in the west, but then a couple storm systems moving eastward through the Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes on Monday will eventually lead to more heat and humidity moving to the east coast as we head towards the middle and latter half of the week. And take a moment to enjoy cherry harvest in Sodus, New York. John sharing this footage on Facebook. Teams have been working 12 to 14-hour shifts to bring in the fruit. Despite dry weather, farmers say the crop looks great. They expect to harvest a few hundred tons of cherries here at Lake Breeze Fruit Farm this year. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
Soybeans charged hard into the weekend on weather worries. We'll see if this market can hold. Michelle Rook takes a look next. And later, the benefits of farming fish with hot water. It's a thing. We're off to Idaho to learn more in the country.
AgDay is brought to you by the End Zone by Farm Shop MFG, which allows you to rehydrate your soybeans from 10 to 13%. On a 20,000 bushel bin, that's an extra semi-load added to your bottom line. Order your End Zone fan control by August 31st and receive $200 off.
That wheat tour, along with the resumption of shipments from Ukraine, took some of the wind out of the wheat market sales. Michelle Rook joins us once again with more.
Well, joining us to visit a little bit more about that grain market, Arlen Suderman with StoneX Group, and a big up week in soybeans last week, over $1.50 in the November, and weather pushing that. Do we have enough weather premium in that market?
Well, that really depends on where the weather goes from this point, I would say. If the weather forecasts that we've been getting continue to verify and we lock in this high pressure for the next several weeks, then we very well may see more premium come in. Just a 5% drop in yield nationally would essentially wipe out the ending stocks estimate the USDA has. And obviously that can't happen. The market won't allow that to happen. And I think history would suggest we'd have to have higher prices in order to ration that demand.
So what do you think? Will the corn market continue to keep following soybeans, or do they have enough decrease in yield and some concern about that to keep pushing that market on its own?
Well, the trade's making an assumption here that the corn crop is made because July is now past. I think that's an oversimplistic type of assumption. The big thing now is grain fill. We could still lose 5% of the yield, maybe even more. In a worst case scenario, it could be more. But right now I'm working with somewhere in the 2 to 5% range, depending on how this weather forecast verifies. And so corn is following soybeans higher. But the thing is here, don't expect USDA, don't expect the private estimates that come out over the next week or 10 days to really reflect expected lost production, because those are basically August 1st estimates, and the crop looked pretty good on that date. And we did more regionalized problems. I think it's going to be more the September estimates that reflect these smaller crops if this forecast verifies.
Right. So the wheat market's still watching what happens with Ukraine movement of grain, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For a while, it was participating in the weather market. Then on Friday, the trade seemed to recognize that wheat really doesn't have a problem right now. Longer term, we need to watch this drought in the plains to make sure we get enough moisture in order to plant the hard red winter wheat crop. It's a little bit early for it to be worrying about that. We need to be watching the drought in Argentina, which is fairly significant, particularly in Buenos Aires region, and see how that plays out as they move into their spring season as well.
Okay, so weather. We're still trading it. Thanks so much for joining us, Arlen Suderman with StoneX Group, and we'll have more Ag Day coming up.
Contact Arlen Suderman by email at arlen.suderman@intlfcstone.com. Ag Day, sponsored by Total Acre. Randy Dowdy and David Hula's Next Level program is now Total Acre. We're still focused on farmers helping farmers while hitting record yields and ROI. Check us out at totalacre.com.
Meteorologist Matt Yurosavik joining us. And Matt, as we look at precipitation forecast for this week, kind of a have and have-nots here.
Yeah, we've got more out in the west. We've got more in the Ohio Valley, parts of the southeast. But right in the middle of the country where we really need it, it looks like we're going to be short again. And you can see the area shaded there in the middle of the country from southern Texas all the way up into southern parts of the Dakotas and the upper Midwest, dealing with below average rainfall this week. Going to be hot and dry in the center of the country. Meanwhile, still monsoon season in the west. Parts of the west, though, talking about Nevada and Southern California, going to get in on some of that rain, and the northern Rockies will as well. And then we've got more rain going on here in parts of the Ohio Valley and Middle Tennessee over towards the East Coast. Still going to be hot and dry, though, along the Gulf Coast and parts of Florida as well. Here's the precipitation this week. Notice there's that bullseye there in the Ohio Valley and parts of the east. As the end of the week comes in, we'll see more chances for tropical moisture, some afternoon scattered showers and storms. A little bit of moisture here in the upper Great Lakes and the upper Midwest. And then we've got more of those heavy downpours there in the afternoons back in the Southwest. So dealing with a lot of precipitation, but some of it in areas where we do not need more of that. Still going to put a dent in the drought this week back here in the West, and hopefully some help coming for parts of Nevada and Southern California. Even Texas could get in on a little bit of rain, but areas that will see it more, again, the Ohio Valley, where we had a lot last week, and parts of the Gulf Coast not in any sort of drought conditions right now. As regards to temperature, we talked about this a little bit ago, much above average right through the middle of the country, upper Midwest and parts of the Great Lakes, dealing with highs that could be 10 to 15 degrees above normal. Temperatures in the 90s and triple digits. Only places that are going to be below normal are back in the Southwest, where we've got all those heavy downpours and showers, and up in the Pacific Northwest as well. You can see that jet stream again going to be digging back through the middle of the country as we head towards the second half of the week, and you can really see how far that goes, keeping the heat and humidity across the east as we head into next weekend. And August as a whole looking very warm across the lower 48, and precipitation-wise, not much going on through many of the important growing regions here in the United States, and we're going to continue to track that right here on Ag Day, and I'll have more coming up on that tomorrow morning. That's a look around the country. Now let's take a look at the weather where you live. Athens, Ohio, showers and thunderstorms, a high near 80 degrees. Heading toward Jamestown, North Dakota, sunny and warm, a high near 86 degrees. And Santa Fe, New Mexico, heavy rain and thunderstorms, a high of 81.
Stay tuned, folks. We are going to talk blisteringly hot auction prices on all types of trucks.
Your next piece of equipment is on MachineryPete.com. Search equipment from dealerships across the country to find what you're looking for. Only on MachineryPete.com.
Trucks in all shapes and sizes are fetching a pretty penny these days. Machinery Pete joins us with Sticker Shock.
Well, folks, I've been talking a lot lately about the red-hot auction prices on good used tractors, and that market just on fire. But honestly, I'm seeing this level of pricing all across the farm equipment space. Now today, let's just talk all manner of trucks. So let's start off with grain trucks. And here's a look at the 4 highest auction prices I've ever seen in the U.S. on international 4400 grain trucks. And you'll note the 4 highest prices all since February. Now back in early February there, a pair of 07s on an auction in Illinois went for $89,500 and $87,500. And then more recently, July 8th, an auction in Wisconsin, an 04 model, coming in at $85,000. And then even more recently, just July 23rd, on an online farm auction in Renard, Illinois by Schmidt Auction, another 04 model. I think it had 178,000 miles on it, and sells for $83,000. So now let's pivot and talk about pickups. Now how about this one? This was June 14th on an auction out in Watford City, North Dakota, a 2021 Ram TRX, only showing 100 miles on it. This thing sold hard cash auction for $97,500. So what do you think if your late grandfather, if you'd have told him, Grandpa, someday you'll see a used pickup scratch 100K at auction? Just unbelievable. And let's wind it up here with semis. And I think maybe you know what's coming here, but I blogged about this online auction last Thursday, Villa Grove, Illinois by Sullivan Auctioneers. This 2006 Peterbilt 379, 364,801 miles on it, sold for $262,000. Obviously, all-time record high price. All I can say to that is wow.
All right, thanks, Pete. Well, hot springs are often used for relaxing. Up next, meet an Idaho farmer using it to grow fish. We'll show you how next.
Registration is open for the 2022 Pro Farmer Crop Tour. Join our team as we gain insight on the 2022 growing season in person or online. Visit profarmercroptour.com/register to select the stop nearest you.
Drilling a well and getting hot water may not sound like a recipe for success, but for a transplant farmer in Idaho, it's been the key to building his business, as shared by the Idaho Farm Bureau.
I moved to Idaho in 1971 and because of the hot water, and bought this place and developed it into a catfish farm, been running it ever since. When I bought this place, a comment that was made was, what did Leo want with that old rock pile? The water's even too hot to drink. And now hot water sells for several times more than cold water. There's so many things you can do with it. You can grow a lot more species of fish, and you can heat buildings with it, do everything, and then still have it left over for irrigating after we get through with it. A catfish needs water between 80 and 85 degrees. Tilapia the same way. Tilapia will die if the water gets below 60 degrees. Catfish just quit feeding and won't grow. So all the warm water species of fish can be raised on it, where with the cold water, trout and sturgeon are the only thing we're growing. Where most agriculture specialized, I diversified, and I may tell you, the strength of the company was the diversity. The weakness was trying to manage all that diversity. We raised about 10,000 alligators in 10 years, and they get West Nile virus. We didn't know that, and the people could catch West Nile virus from the gators being carriers and processing them and everything, and I didn't want that risk. So we quit raising the alligators. We had two left that we kept just for the public to come in and look. And one of them turned out to be the largest alligator in captivity anywhere in the world. It weighed 910 pounds and was 12.5 feet long. I'm 84.
84, you're still tinkering.
I'm still having fun.
You're still innovating, yeah.
And I've got a granddaughter who's getting ready to take over the business.
Our thanks to the Idaho Farm Bureau for sharing that story. Fantastic. That's all the time we have today. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great week out in farm country.